වයිබෝවන් සුබ දවසක් වේවා හිතවතුනි. අද ඔබ එකතු වන්නේ ටොරොන්ටෝවෙන් නැගෙන අපේ හඬ රූපන සමග. අද අපේ රූපන වැඩසටහන විශේෂ මුහුණුවරක් ගන්නවා. ඒ කියන්නේ අද අපි ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ විදේශ කටයුතු අමාත්‍ය ගරු අලි සබ්රි මහතා සමග කරන සම්මුඛ සාකච්ඡාවකින් අද අපි අපේ වැඩසටහන සරසනවා. ඔබේ පවුලේ උදවියත් සමග රස විඳින්න මේ ආරම්භ වන්නේ ටොරොන්ටෝවෙන් නැගෙන අපේ හඬ රූපන. Hibowan, Wanakam, Assalamu alaikum. Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. You are joining a very special segment of Rupane, where we are having a conversation with the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs in Sri Lanka, Mr. Ali Sabri. Mr. Ali Sabri has played some key roles in the political landscape in Sri Lanka. He was a former finance minister. He was also the Minister of Justice, as well as he is a President Councillor. So, Honorable Minister, we welcome you on behalf of all Sri Lankans living in Canada and all Canadians of Sri Lankan origin, as well as our viewers across the globe. Ayubowan, sir.
Ayubowan, thank you very much for having me here. Wanakam, assalamu alaikum.
So our objective in today's segment, sir, is to discuss about some trending topics about our motherland Sri Lanka and some hot topics. So what such trending topics these days has been your speech at the Cambridge Student Union. So first reflect on you, as I introduced you, having held so many key roles in the Sri Lankan political arena. And in January this year, you were invited to deliver a speech at the Cambridge Student Union. As per my research, the magnitude of individuals who have delivered such speeches at the Cambridge Student Union are Sir Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, Stephen Hawking, and Bill Gates. So you joined such caliber of speakers and in this special speech that you delivered at the Cambridge Student Union. So if you could reflect on that, sir, and also tell our audience what was the key message that was delivered during that speech.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much I'm humbled by the invitation which I got from the Cambridge Student Union. I thought it is more to do with Sri Lanka's progress and a difficult time during the last 4-5 years, and I happens to be playing some sort of an important role during that particular period of time. I thought they wanted a reflection as to how personally my experience during that period, as well as what kind of reasons which led to the Sri Lanka's downfall from a very promising country at the time of independence to the current situation what we were, and also they were also impressed, having gone through such a deep and steep fall during the 2022 years, how well we have managed to pull Sri Lanka back on track, showing the resilience of our people. So I think those are the things they want us to reflect with the student union. I was happy to be part of that.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a historical and a proud moment for any Sri Lankan, and we are proud of you and for delivering that speech at the Cambridge Student Union. Now let's move on with the theme of today's conversation about the trending topics and the most discussed topics about Sri Lanka. And one of such topics is about the deep economic crisis Sri Lanka underwent and its path to recovery. As the whole world knows, Sri Lanka has been struggling with a deep economic crisis in the recent past. Could you please explain to us the contribution the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made in Sri Lanka's path to recovery?
I think we all know that Sri Lanka had a very grave financial debacle towards the beginning of 2022. Since then, it was important for us on several fronts to work together. Number one was to see that the reforms take place on our tax structure within the country. Number two is to win the international community. Number three is to get the support of the multilaterals such as IMF, World Bank, ADB and AIB and all those things. In doing so, we couldn't have done it on our own. It is a teamwork. International community matters a lot. So when we try to reach out to the international community, it was important for us to get in touch with everyone, both in the East and the West. So accordingly, Foreign Ministry, in collaboration and in partnership with the Finance Ministry under His Excellency, the President of Sri Lanka, continue to reach out to China, India, the Paris Club, which include US and UK and the others, as well as Japan, and also the Middle Eastern countries, as well as the ASEAN countries. I thought Foreign Ministry played a major role, first in order to get the support, to get the extended fund facilities from the IMF, which was, of course, conditioned upon that we should get assurances from our bilateral creditors saying that they will cooperate with our debt sustainability analysis. So that was a gigantic task, but we managed to get that too. So it was a team effort from the government of Sri Lanka under the leadership of His Excellency, the President of Sri Lanka.
So you were also the Minister of Finance, former Minister of Finance as well during the most testing and trying times of Sri Lankan economy. What role did you play during these most testing and struggling times?
So yeah, I think in 2022, April, no one wanted to take over Finance Ministry. So I took it upon myself that to start the reforms, and I thought I started the reforms in consultation with the then President, Honorable Gotabaya Rajapaksa. First of all, what I did was no point of repeating the same mistake again and again. Somebody who is not feeling that they have done something wrong or the new path is necessary, no point of keeping them as the technocrats. So I decided that people who are not pro-reform should make way for the people who are capable and doing reform. So accordingly, we immediately appointed a new governor and a new secretary of the Treasury, because those are the two key members of the economic reform team. Fiscal reforms are conducted through the Treasury, and the monetary reforms are conducted through the central bank. So we brought in new faces to it rather than experienced people, but as the governor and as the secretary. So that made a big difference. And then we started cost-reflective pricing, because you remember the 13 hours of power cut, 3 to 4 days long fuel queues, no cooking gas. So that whole reason was you were importing at 100 rupees and selling at about 40, 50 rupees. No bank was willing to give you money. So accordingly, we said, we have no choice. You can't continue to subsidize this. You have to pay and buy at the market rate. So so as a result of those reforms, the SOEs, which made a loss of about 847 billion in the year 2022, had made a profit close to about 300 billion in 2023. Then, of course, we also knew that the debt was unsustainable. That debt has to be restructured. Accordingly, we went and start talking to the people and announced a moratorium on foreign debt payment. And that was the foundation for debt sustainability. With that, we approached this IMF and started working with the IMF, and IMF guidance and IMF approval and IMF reach with the wider international world was what was required at that time for Sri Lanka, so that people will take us seriously. So there were many reforms like that we immediately rolled out, and as a result of which, I think we were able to lay the foundation for the deep-rooted reforms which were required in Sri Lanka.
Actually, it was a pivotal moment and a proud moment for a Sri Lankan. So let's take a look at some of the visuals of that speech.
As I told you, I come from Sri Lanka. Due to a strategic location at the intersection of maritime trade routes and sea lanes, Sri Lanka has historically attracted the interest of the global superpowers. Prior to gaining independence in 1948, Sri Lanka was under colonial rule for 500 years, almost. Though the colonial era's legacy of exploitation and division left an indelible mark on our nation, we cannot disregard the fact that it gave us the democracy which we enjoy today, the rule of law, an independent judiciary which is vibrant, the infrastructure, and a robust civil service. At the threshold of independence, it was up to the leaders of the diverse, multicultural, and newly independent Sri Lanka to build on those foundations and create a country which is stable, prosperous, and peaceful for all its Sri Lankans. Democracy is no doubt the best form of governance. But in my opinion, it has some inherent challenges, 3 of them, that somebody has to overcome to make it meaningful. First, the temptation of exploit societal divisions for electoral gains. Secondly, to resist populist economic policies which are unsustainable to gain electoral advantage once again. Thirdly, to maintain the policy consistency across the governments and parties. So relative economic and social progress democracies have achieved all over the world can be directly attributed how well the leaders in those countries tackle these 3 challenges which I spoke of. Looking back at the last 75 years, as an independent nation, Sri Lanka has worked diligently to ensure the social upliftment of its people. We have addressed the challenges of literacy, nutrition, education, and social welfare, achieving significant progress in these areas. Sri Lanka provides universal free healthcare and universal free education to all its citizens. Some of our indicators, such as infant mortal rates at birth, are comparable to advanced countries in the world. Sri Lanka was conferred universal adult franchise in 1931. Since then, we have always had consistently peaceful transfer of power, separation of power, and also an independent judiciary to safeguard the rule of law. Of course, while we take pride on our achievement, I think as Sri Lankan, we should have the humility to accept our failures. We are still a work in progress when considering our most crucial aim, forging together the diversity of our people into one coherent and strong Sri Lankan nation.
Scarborough Nagare, Markham and McNichol intersection he Majestic City එක තුල පිහිටි ශ්‍රී ශායි ලාංකික අපේ කඩේ බෞද්ධ පූජා භාණ්ඩ පිරිකර බුදු පිළිම වහන්සේලා, බුදු රැස්මාලා, මුතුකුඩ, බෞද්ධ කොඩි ඇතුළු ආගමික සැරසිලි, සරම්, ගවුම් ඇතුළු සිංහල බතික් ඇඳුම් පැළඳුම්, වෙස්මුහුණෝ විසිතුරු අත්කම් නිර්මාණ, ලී කැටයම් ආශ්‍රිත නිර්මාණ ඇතුළු විවිධාකාර නිර්මාණ, දේශීය ආහාර වර්ග ඇතුළු ශ්‍රී ලාංකික ඔබගේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් සඳහා ගොඩවෙන්න අදම අපේම තැන. ශ්‍රීෂායි ලාංකීය අපේ කඩේ. ඔබගේ නවීන මෝටර් රථයේ සියලුම ආකාරයේ නඩත්තු කටයුතු අපි දන්න අපේම ආයතනයකින් පළපුරුදු කාර්මිකයින් ලවා විශ්වාසනීයව සිදු කරගන්න ඔබත් කැමතිද? එහෙනම් එන්න ටෙක් ලංකා ඔටෝරපයා වෙත. නවීන තාක්ෂණික පහසුකම් වලින් සමන්විත සියලුම වර්ගයේ නඩත්තු කටයුතු වේගවත් කඩිනම් සුහදශීලී සේවාවක් සමගින් දැන් ඔබ වෙත ටෙක් ලංකා ඔටෝරපයා වෙතින්.
බලපත්‍ර අංකය 10.53.0. දේපල වෙළඳාම් සහ පෙර ඉදිකිරීම් ගැනුම්කරුවනි. ඔබේ පූර්ව ඉදිකිරීම් මිලදී ගැනීමේ කොන්ත්‍රාත් කාලය මාස 4කින් අවසන් වන්නේ නම් මේ ඔබේ අවධානයටයි. ඔබට අලාභදායී වන ප්‍රමාදයන් වළක්වා ගැනීමට අවශ්‍යද? අමතර ගාස්තු හෝ ඔබේ තැන්පතු අහිමි වීමේ අවධානමක් තිබේද? ඇන්ටන් ධර්මශීලන් මෝර්ගේජ් අලයන්ස් නිවාස ණය නියෝජිතයාට ඔබට සහාය විය හැක. 416යි 704යි 1200 අමතා ඇන්ටන් වෙන් කරවා ගන්න. ඔහු සත්‍යන්ත නිවාඩු දින ඇතුළුව සෑම දිනකම මධ්‍යම රාත්‍රී දක්වා සේවය සපයයි. ඒ සඳහා 416යි 704යි 1200 අමුතන්න. නැතිනම් antonmortgage.com වෙත පිවිසෙන්න.
අලුතෙන්ම කැනඩාවට ආපු කෙනෙක්ට ගියක් ගන්න එකද හොඳ කොන්්ඩ එකක් ගන්න එක? හරි මරියාසයක මගන්න
පියපුතු සුසංයෝගයෙන් පැමිණ දේපල වෙනදාමේ ප්‍රමුඛතම නාමය රියාස් රවුෆ් රුෂ්ඩි රවුෆ්.
Yes, so what such a reform could be the utilization or the effective utilization of Sri Lanka's maritime potential, because now it has become a pivotal conversation, mainly because the strategic location of Sri Lanka as an island in the Indian Ocean, which is closer to the world's busiest naval routes and connecting east and the west, and also because we are so closer to the undersea cable communication network. And all these factors have played into the maritime potential becoming one of the focal points in the Sri Lanka's path to recovery. We all know what has happened. But now we need to focus on the recovery phase. And on this recovery phase, I believe Sri Lanka's maritime potential plays a bigger role. And we know historically, Portuguese, Dutch, British, when they invaded Sri Lanka, so the maritime trade and maritime potential was one of their focuses. And also when Arabic countries and Chinese landed in Sri Lanka, maritime trade was also one of their focal points. And again, when we reflect on the current situation, sir, the rivalry between China and India in the Indian Ocean is viewed as a huge pressure on Sri Lanka's economy. And on the other hand, we know the Belt and Road Initiatives, which is BRI, led by China, and the Western world's development modality led by Japan, which we know as Free and Open Indo-Pacific Initiative, which is FOIP. Now, BRI and FOIP are in severe competition in the region, increasing geopolitical pressure on the island's political and economical spheres. And we know China has invested hugely and heavily in Sri Lanka. So my question to you, sir, in the above context, how do you balance the foreign policy of the country between BRI and FOIP? And how do you handle their severe influence in reshaping Sri Lankan economic and political landscape?
No, thank you. Basically, we feel Sri Lanka's strategic location is the biggest advantage Sri Lanka has. So if you stay isolated and stay away from the action, you are not going to exploit that and make use of it. So with the opportunities, with challenges comes the opportunities. So it's our challenge is to make use of these opportunities available to us and face the challenges in a manner which is not going to be harmful to our short-term, medium-term, and long-term stability. So accordingly, we have made it very clear our policy, foreign policy, is independent foreign policy. That doesn't mean that we sit and idle or not take part in any of the discussion. We have a multi-aligned foreign policy. That means while we maintain our independent foreign policy, while we not jump into a bandwagon of any groupings or formations, we would continue to work with both East and the West. That is how our legacy had been. That's how we should be. So accordingly, it's important for us to work with China because China has invested heavily on Sri Lanka, and that is where the investment is going to come in the next decade or two. India is our largest neighbor. We have a historical and a civilizational tie with them. Indian economy is growing at a rate. So we thought that it's important that Sri Lanka make use of that opportunity available to Sri Lanka, particularly the southern state in India, that is Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and all those about 300 million people are growing at a rate and very fast. And hopefully Tamil Nadu's economy is poised to reach $1 trillion towards the end of 2030 or so. With all those possibilities, we need to work with them. And Western market is where our product goes to. Maybe US, EU, as well as UK. So therefore, we cannot afford to take sides. We need to work with everyone else. So we are conscious of that fact. And so far, it has worked very well for our advantage. So what we say and what we do is that we don't want the big power rivalry coming into our doorstep. We don't want anyone coming into the Indian Ocean and setting up bases both within or outside Sri Lankan either land or in the international waters. But subject to that, we are open to work with all the parties together because we feel decoupling is not possible. De-risking may be possible. When you de-risk the West or any other country, you need to look at several countries. Sri Lanka is an advantageous position because of our foreign policy, because of our location, because of our literacy rate, and because of our intelligent workforce, and also the rule of law. So therefore, we feel we are strategically located. Going forward, we need to exploit that as a maritime hub, as an airspace hub, and also a logistics center in the region. So that is why a lot of investment are coming towards Sri Lanka in IT, in port building, in building refineries, as well as we continue to receive air connectivity. So we are also now fast-tracking Sri Lanka's connectivity to India in terms of our grid connectivity, undersea cable connectivity, air connectivity, ferry connectivity, with the potential of somewhere down the line having a road connectivity, because that will give access to a larger market for Sri Lanka in India and the southern India, and also the Indian also to have easy access to Colombo. So as a first step, we have already allowed UTI to be used in Sri Lanka. That is, Indians could use their pay phones or telephones to pay the payments in Indian rupees in Sri Lanka when they travel. So that's how we are trying to make use of the opportunities which have been made available to us with new globalization and this increased interest in our region and particularly our country.
Thank you, sir. So do you view the potential of blue economy in Sri Lanka as our new modality for the 21st century to take Sri Lanka ahead or out of this economic downfall we have had?
Blue economy is one of them. Blue economy will probably take time. Of course, fisheries is a part of our strategy, as well as maritime movement and use it as a port in the region, and also tourism. That's also part of it, but that's not all about. We're also looking at basically IT sector development, using Sri Lanka as a manufacturing hub, as well as a regional hub to establish your headquarters in the region, and to gateway to the South Asia, which is about 2 billion people. So we feel there is opportunity to see at Sri Lanka as a naval hub, as an air traffic hub, as a tourism hotspot in the region, and also a financial hub with our new port city being transformed into a financial city.
Thanks, sir. Now, if we come back to Canada, Canada has declared its Indo-Pacific strategy. How could Sri Lanka develop an economic engagement with Canada in this maritime domain, sir?
We are open to do business with any country for that matter. And I think a Canadian business delegation visited Sri Lanka last year. I think people to people, we have strong connections. Sri Lankan origin people continue to visit Sri Lanka. We are inviting them, look at Sri Lanka as an option for your investment, particularly those who speak Tamil and coming from the northern eastern province. Look at northern eastern province as an area where you should contribute for infrastructure development, skill development, and also providing opportunities for those people in that area. It's important that we help the underprivileged and the people who need support from various parts of the country in order to improve their skills so that they can face the world with confidence. That cannot be done by only empty slogans. That has to take place by meticulous investment and commitment to your country and your people. So what we are inviting both the Sri Lankan community, Sri Lankan diaspora, and the Canadian business community, look Sri Lanka as a positive investment destination, because the market is so big. Because you are no longer looking at the Sri Lankan market, you are looking at the South Asian market. And we are also in the process of entering into several of free trade agreement. We recently signed the free trade agreement with Thailand. We have signed one with Singapore. We are starting negotiation with both Indonesia and Malaysia. And we are in the process of discussing the EDCA with India. And Chinese free trade agreement are also being discussed. So what we are looking at it through this, give access to the Sri Lankan products in these vast markets. So with that comes an opportunity for the investors to make Sri Lanka as your home and house, to establish your manufacturing bases, looking at that larger market, not looking at only Sri Lankan 22 million population.
Yeah, that actually gave me a segue to my next question, sir. as you know, that we have so many expatriates of Sri Lanka, so many Sri Lankans living abroad. And of course, although we are living in Canada, our heart is always at Sri Lanka. We may be living in Canada, but we always consider Sri Lanka as our motherland and our birthplace. And there are many Sri Lankans who are willing to invest in Sri Lanka, who are willing to help Sri Lanka. So what stimuli or infrastructure that Sri Lanka could provide to attract all these Sri Lankans living abroad for them to invest and for them to contribute in Sri Lanka's recovery?
There are several areas. As I said, that the lowest hanging fruits are the hospitality sector. Tourism has seen a remarkable comeback. If you look at from 2022 to 2023, we have about 106% increment on year. If you look at January and February 2023 to January and February up to date, 2024, we have seen another further 100% or so increment. So we would see the highest number of tourists coming to Sri Lanka ever in the history. This year, hopefully about 2.4 to 2.5 million tourists. So where there, whatever the area that you come from, there are opportunities for tourism development, and that is vast. We look forward to have about 5 million tourists by 2030. And then, of course, IT, we all know that lot of companies and the investors on their own have invested and got their back offices in Sri Lanka. And thereafter, of course, it depending on your areas of specialty, there are a number of areas available. And then if anyone is interested, I think BOI, they can contact the BOI. BOI is ready to invest project. I think Honorable Minister told me there are about 500 lands that have been identified for development and several projects are there. So we can support them. It all depends on what the area, the potential investors are interested in investing. And we welcome all of them. And of course, subject to our own normal procedural, some of the challenges. Sri Lanka remains to be a country based on rule of law, an independent judiciary. So therefore, your investment are relatively safe.
කැනඩාවේ කොහොමද ලක්ෂ 5ක ගයක් ගන්නේ 25000ක් ඩිපොසිට් කරලා? රියාස් අයගෙන් ගහන්න ඕනේ.
පියපුතුසු සංයෝගයෙන් පැමිණ දේපල වෙනදාමේ ප්‍රමුඛතම නාමය රියාස් රවුෆ් රුෂ්ඩි රවුෆ්.
බලපත්‍ර අංකය 10.53. නිවාස හිමියන්ගේ අවධානයටයි. ඔබගේ පළමු හෝ දෙවන මෝර්ගේජ් කිසියම් සමාගමක් හෝ පෞද්ගලික ණය දෙන්නෙකු සංගමයක හෝ බැංකුවක ඉහළ පොලි අනුපාතයක් යටතේ නිවාස ණයක් ලබාගෙන තිබේද? එම ඉහළ පොලි අනුපාතය පෞද්ගලික ණය සහ ණයවරපත් ණය ගෙවීම සඳහා ඔබේ නිවස නැවත ප්‍රතිමූල්‍යකරණය කිරීමට ඔබට අවශ්‍යද? ඔබට නිවස උකසට තබා ණය මුදලක් ලබා ගැනීමට අවශ්‍යද? ඇන්ටන් අමතන්න. ඇන්ටන් ධර්මසීලන් නිවාස ණය සහකරුහට ඔබට සහාය විය හැක. දැන්ම 416 1200 අමතන්න. සති අන්ත සහ නිවාඩු දින ඇතුළුව සෑම දිනකම මධ්‍යම රාත්‍රිය දක්වා ඔබට ඇන්ටන් සමග ඇමතිය හැක. දුරකථන අංකය 416 704 1200. එසේත් නැතිනම් antonmortgage.com වෙත පිවිසෙන්න.
So you just touched on the subjects about Sri Lanka going to IMF to borrow and to restructure debt. But wouldn't it increase the debt burden of Sri Lanka? And have we given any thought, rather than depending on debt, to find new ways of developing or helping Sri Lanka's economic recovery, like we discussed, focusing on the maritime potential of Sri Lanka? Are we looking into new avenues?
Of course, IMF is not going and just borrowing their money. IMF has a very extensive EFF program. They have some fundamental reforms we need to discuss. Some of those things are that we must increase the revenue, because in Sri Lanka, revenue as a percentage of the GDP in the year 2022 was 8.2%. I think Canada, I believe, is 35% of the GDP is taxed, and that's how they run the country. So therefore, we need tax reforms to expand the tax net so that everybody who deserves to pay a certain amount of money must pay. That's how the countries are run. Otherwise, countries will collapse like what happened in 2022. So we are looking at revenues. We are also looking at getting the subsidies away. For example, why should anyone subsidize Sri Lankan Airlines? Including people who have never ever traveled on aircraft or got into the aircraft. Why should they pay that subsidy? So we are reforming the SOE so that will reduce the losses. Already we have seen very positive signs after cost-reflective pricing coming in. And also the debt sustainability itself is that answer to your question. When the IMF prepared a debt sustainability, that is over a period of time, your revenue should be enough for you to pay the debt as well as to meet the recurrent expenditure of the year. So we are looking at it. We are not just doing it for the sake of doing. We are looking at reforming the SOEs, reforming the public service, increasing the revenue, streamlining the revenue mechanism, and reducing the corruption. But in the meantime, as you very correctly point out, these measures are important, but growth will only come with new investment. So new investment will come on the areas that you are looking at. As I told you earlier, out of different areas of investment we are looking at it, one of the most key area is to utilize our maritime hub and our strategic location for port development. Already, there are development taking place, and one of the east terminal is being right now developed by Adani Group of India, and Sri Lanka is looking at developing the west terminal. We have already two other terminals which are functioning right now. We are also looking at in the recent past, the Hambantota port had done well. So we are also looking at making Sri Lanka a regional hub for petroleum refineries. Sinopec has recently won a tender which was called to establish a refinery in Hambantota. Indians are trying to connect their pipeline to Sri Lanka so that there will be enough supplies on that. And then we are also looking at our enormous potential as a renewable energy hub, both solar and wind, as well as green hydrogen, to make use it as renewable energy. So I think we have excess quantity of those renewable energy. Once we generate it, what we are trying to do, once we connect to grids in Sri Lanka and India, we just 21 nautical miles from Jaffna. So we are trying to export the excess energy to Indian grid. So there are various ways of connecting, and we also want to connect the Trincomalee port to the southern ports in the in India. So yes, there are different plans, and using the maritime potential of Sri Lanka is in the forefront of them, as you suggested.
Another, maybe a challenge or an opportunity, depending on the way we look at it, sir, could be the growing interest of the countries in Sri Lanka. Now, for an example, the interest of USA in Sri Lanka, China, India, Japan. Now, being the foreign minister, sir, how do you view that, and how do you balance that, maintaining those relationships with each countries who a layman would see as competing with each other to invest in Sri Lanka or to show their interest in Sri Lanka? How do you balance that?
So basically, there are a few fundamental what we would like to emphasize, that as I told earlier, we would not get into any of the camps and identify us with any camps. We will continue to be independent. While being independent, we will work with everyone. How do you work with everyone? We will work with everyone on the condition that none of those engagements should threaten the security or sovereignty of any other country, particularly India in the region. Subject to that, we will welcome investment from various parts. We are open to do business with anyone and everyone as long as those investments are at agreed limits. So therefore, the best way to do that is to make it transparent, open, all for bids, and give it to the best person or best companies which are looking at it. Of course, subject to certain conditions, or some of the projects are strategic and those are based on garment to garment. So all in all, what we are looking at it is what you very correctly pointed out, make use of these opportunities as opportunities, not as while understanding the challenges which comes with those things. So we have done quite okay up to now. So I know this is going to be challenging for years to come, but we will continue to look at this case by case and see how we can do this. And as a emerging market and a small country, Sri Lanka have always maintained our sovereignty. Maintaining the sovereignty is we should be able to independently decide what is good for us and continue to do that. But while we do that, we should also be a dignified, responsible member of the international community so that we don't contribute towards the big power rivalry.
Thank you, sir. I think that's such a balancing act, and you very well articulated that. How do you maintain your integrity while we work with those countries and maintaining those international relationship without prioritizing on any particular country? Thank you for that insight, sir. So that actually brings us to the conclusion of today's conversation, sir. Thank you so much for sparing some time from your busy schedule to be with the Rupane viewers. And as you suggested, as Sri Lankans living abroad, we will be always there to assist Sri Lanka and help Sri Lanka in whatever the ways we can. And thank you so much for shedding light on the current trends in Sri Lanka and pointing out on some of the hottest topics, some of the trending topics about Sri Lanka. And thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for giving us this opportunity. And also, I would like to thank the Consul General for Sri Lanka in Toronto, Mr. Tushar Rodrigo, and Mr. Fayad Bakir, the Private Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also Mr. Riaz Rauf for coordinating this interview and giving us this opportunity to have this valuable conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much, sir. And we wish you and Sri Lanka all the very best.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I wish Sri Lankans living in Canada and all over a very pleasant future and a close connection and relationship with your motherland. Thank you very much.
ඉතින් හිතවතුනි, මේ නිමාව දකින්නේ තවත් රූපන් වැඩසටහන. අපි නැවත හමු වෙමු. එතෙක් ඔබ සැමට ආයුබෝවන් වාසනාව.